Good day, everybody, and welcome to the Law Podcast. My name is Lishonolo Brian Mururi, and I want us to talk about a very serious phenomenon today. I want us to take a deep dive into asking and then answering this one important question. The important question that I want us to ask and answer today is the following: Parliamentary supremacy or AI extremism? That is, in the reality of the South Africa that we live in today, who really governs? Is it the lawmakers or is it the algorithm? We have previously asked a lot of questions about AI, like will it take our jobs? Will it impact national security? And will it replace search engines? But now, here is a strange one. How do you discipline a rogue AI model? I'm talking about Grok, the AI chatbot created by Elon Musk. It is on the government's radar in South Africa. Why? Because of its abuses and problematic takes. Who knew that a teenager and Grok would be the same? But a rebellious teenager is not a national issue. Grok could be. First, let me tell you what the problem is. Last month, Elon Musk launched the latest version of Grok. You simply mention Grok's ID in your post and then Grok would reply. Easy? But just one problem though. This AI bot has turned abusive. It has gone haywire and started responding with genocide accusations that can only be characterized as anti-black discrimination, and it does so in a manner that threatens the stability, the security, and the legitimacy of any government or nation. But I'm sure that you've seen that by now, what I'm talking about. And that is only the first problem. The second problem is this. Grok is wading into South African politics. It is branding certain leaders, like the commander-in-chief of the Economic Freedom Fighters, as corrupt and undemocratic. That too, without any proof. Now, what takes the cake is that this AI, it has total disregard for South Africa's judiciary and its laws, bringing up the kill the boer, kill the farmer song, and then branding and misinterpreting it as racially charged, even after our courts have lambasted this notion.
August 2022, the Equality Court ruled in favor of the EFF, stating that the song did not constitute hate speech. And in May 2024, the SCA dismissed AfriForum's appeal with costs, finding that AfriForum had failed to establish that it constituted hate speech and that EFF leader Julius Malema was doing no more than exercising his right to freedom of expression. The Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer chant, which Malema continues to sing, was used by South African-born businessman Elon Musk to justify accusations that South Africa is allegedly violating the human rights of specific groups in the country.
The complaint that the first in Punch song, open quote, kiss the Boer or kill the Boer or kiss the farmer, close quote, constitute hate speech and unfair discrimination is dismissed.
This begs the question: is Grok a judge, a rebel, or a digital outlaw? Has it replaced the law, risen above it, or started making its own? Case in point, 14 May 2025, an AI storm erupted on social media.
Welcome back. The AI chatbot Grok, created by Elon Musk's XAI, has been responding to queries with unrelated information about violence against white people in South Africa.
Grok has left people baffled on the internet. They ask Grok harmless questions about music, about entertainment, and about scenic locations and places. And instead of simple replies, the bot kept bringing up white genocide in South Africa.
Elon Musk's chatbot Grok began spouting a wild conspiracy that white people are facing a genocide in South Africa. The statements were entirely false. Yet, Grok linked everything from a baseball question to this imagined white genocide, claiming that it was instructed by its creators to accept this narrative as real. The result was a media frenzy. This matter is far beyond Grok though. In recent days, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, has also cited the alleged white farm murders in South Africa, granting visas to white Afrikaners, claiming that a genocide is taking place, even as the countries officially flatly denied it.
The video was showing a burial site. It is unsubstantiated that that's the case.
No, it is true that video showed the crosses that represent
what the president claimed.
the video showed images of crosses.
White farmers are being brutally killed and their land is being confiscated in South Africa.
The South African government says claims of Afrikaners being prosecuted are completely false.
Yes, when taken literally, the song Dula Iburu translates to kill the boer, kill the farmer. Alarming? Yeah. At face value? Yes. But then context matters. This is not a racially motivated call for violence. It is a struggle song, rooted in South Africa's painful apartheid history, not a modern day call for the slaughter of white people. Now, to the farm murders. Yes, they do happen. And yes, they are tragic. But here is the reality. South Africa is grappling with widespread violent crime, and farm murders are not isolated to white victims. In 2019, 49 farm murders were recorded, just 0.23% of the country's total of over 21,000 murders. Black farmers and farm workers were amongst the victims too. So the idea that white farmers are being targeted in a genocide is a total myth. Let's talk about the land. South Africa is the most unequal country on earth. Around 80% of arable land remains in the hands of just 7% of the country's white population. So, when there is a call for equitable land redistribution, it is not a call for genocide. It is a call for justice.
What type of future we want for ourselves? We want our land back. We want our economy back. Let the economy benefit the people of South Africa.
Thank you. So we need our land back. We are not apologetic about it.
The only reconciliation that we are seeking is the return of the land without any bloodshed.
We do have a land crisis in South Africa. And we do have deeply emotional historical issues that must be addressed.
And here is the fact. Not a single piece of land has been expropriated without compensation since the dawn of democracy in 1994. What then is this genocide? Genocide is a term that is defined under international law as a deliberate attempt to destroy, in whole or in part, a racial or an ethnic group. That word finds no expression in the current developments of South Africa's context. What is happening here is not a genocide. It is inequality, it is history, it is pain, and a long road to justice. Ramaphosa's government notes no evidence of white persecution, and a South African court has already ruled that the white genocide idea is clearly imagined. In short, Grok's rant thrusts a dangerous myth into international headlines, just as the world leaders debate asylum and diplomacy. And this is the new legal territory for AI bots. Yes, they've been accused of misinformation, but Grok is also being accused of having an attitude problem. Why is that? The answer is programming. Grok is not going rogue. It was designed to be rogue. In fact, let me quote from the company's philosophy. Grok on X, an AI assistant with a twist of humor and a dash of rebellion. I guess abuse now counts as humor. Either way, that tells you why Grok is acting out. As for the response, the government is on it. Reporters say Pretoria has in fact reached out to officials at X. The ministry in the presidency is looking into it. The ministry in the presidency is looking into whether Grok has violated SA's IT rules. They say that there's an investigation, that the law will take its course. But not everyone is convinced. Some believe that Lady Justice is no longer blind, that she now sees wealth and status. Her sword planted, her scales tilted in favor of the rich and the powerful. Why do they think so, you may ask? This is because instead of enforcing legal consequences against Grok at home, South Africa's first citizen chose diplomacy over accountability. It is said that he went and bowed before power abroad, standing at the White House, explaining the nation's affairs to foreign hands in Washington. while the laws of the Republic against Grok stood still. And that is our focus for today. The big question. We ask the big question. Do we still have parliamentary supremacy? Or have we slowly transcended into an AI extremism? Does the rule of law still mean anything? And if so, what happens when the lawbreaker is not a person, but a machine? Think about it for a moment. Who is accountable when the algorithm spreads lies? Simply put, how do we deal with the legal transgression by AI bots? And what does South Africa's law allow us to do about it? Is there anything in our law books to stop the next Grok gate? If so, what are those laws? And are they enough? Those are the troubling questions that we will be answering in this podcast here today. Does our laws regulate any mischiefs by these AI bots like Grok? And what are the legal safeguards which are there to prevent or to punish any mischiefs like what Grok has done? So in order to assist us in answering that critical question, today we'll be embarking on a 6-stage inquiry. In stage 1, I'll be dealing with AI and defamation. And here I'll be answering the question of who is liable when algorithms lie. And then in stage 2, I'll be dealing with freedom of expression versus hate speech when AI goes too far. And then in stage 3, I'll be dealing with the Poppy Act and the algorithmic accountability. Whereas in stage 4, I'll be dealing with delete and AI. Here I'll be specifically talking about negligence and unlawful acts. And then in stage 5, we'll be dealing with the question as to whether the owners of Grok, who is X, formerly known as Twitter, whether they should police AI. And then in the last stage, we'll be dealing with what can be done to prevent future harm. Let's get into it. Section 1. AI and defamation. Who is liable when an AI algorithm lies? According to Cliff Decker-Hofmeyer, under South African law, defamation requires that someone must wrongfully and intentionally publish a defamatory statement about an identifiable person. In practice, the plaintiff must prove the following 4 things. Number 1, there must be a false and a harmful statement. Secondly, there must be publication of such a statement. Thirdly, that publication has to refer to them. And then fourthly, a reasonable person should see it as defamatory. Once proven, the law presumes that the publication was unlawful and injurious. The defendant then must justify the truth of the statement or invoke a defense. For example, a journalist who simply copied an answer from ChatGPT or Grok without fact-checking would not satisfy the reasonable publication test that was established in the landmark case of the National Media versus Bogoshi, 1996. So, if an AI like Grok broadcasts a defamatory claim, like it did with the accusation of white genocide, who then is the publisher in this case? In South African law, the person reposting or tweeting the lie can also be held liable just like any other publisher. As one analyst notes, a journalist who published a known ChatGPT falsehood would almost certainly be deemed negligent for failing to verify. So, in Grok's case, anyone who treated the AI's answer as fact and spread it could face defamation claims. The AI's makers, XAI or Twitter, might argue that it had no intention to defame. Courts would then likely ask the developers if they acted reasonably in training the AI and whether they supervised the bot. If clear warnings and safeguards were in place, liability may not lie. But if it is shown that Grok ignored obvious risks, such as hallucinations, a court could find them negligent. At the same time, the Electronic Communications and Transactions Act, the ECTA, provides for takedown notices. A victim of Grok's false claims could, for example, send X or any hosting internet service providers, the ISPs, a formal notice of unlawful content. If X then promptly removes the content, it retains the immunity under the Electronic Communications and Transactions Act. But if X ignores a valid notice, it can lose its safe harbor. In practice, South Africans' internet service providers almost always remove content on notice. Indeed, about 95% of takedown requests are being complied with. The defamation steps are as follows. A civil case would require proof of falsity and harm. Not necessarily actual loss, like lost income, even needs to be shown. According to Thomson Wells, injury to reputation alone can justify damages. Under the Electronic Communications and Transaction Act notice, under Section 77 of that relevant act, any person can notify the service provider of unlawful content. The provider must then act expeditiously to remove it. In short, X or Twitter will be expected to delete Grok's offending post once alerted about the falsity of the accusations of white genocide. In continuation of our discussion, let us head on to stage 2, where we will be discussing freedom of expression versus hate speech when AI goes too far. South Africa's constitution fiercely protects free speech, but it draws a sharp line at hate. Section 16, subsection 1 of the constitution guarantees freedom of speech and thus include media rights. However, section 16, subsection 2 carves out that this right does not extend to the advocacy of hatred based on race, which constitutes incitement to cause harm. In other words, you cannot lawfully promote hatred or violence and then hide behind free speech. The white genocide narratives clearly targets race and could stroke violence. It fits the very definition of prohibited hate speech. This white genocide hallucination is a false, racially charged claim that implies violence or extermination of a protected group. Hate speech is also explicitly outlawed. Courts may even refer hate speech cases to criminal prosecution. The government itself has been very clear in stating that freedom of expression is a constitutional right, but this right does not offer protection for hate speech or deliberate misinformation. As an official statement even put it, deliberate lies and racial hatred are crimes, and the law enforcement will not hesitate to act against them, regardless of who spreads them. In fact, South African police statistics show that farm murders are extremely rare. In one recent quarter, only one white farmer was killed. This notion of a widespread farm murder crisis has been called a lie. Against this backdrop, Grok AI's fact myth is not just wrong, it is socially dangerous. Under stage 3, we will be discussing POPIA and algorithmic accountability. Here we'll be looking at how South Africa's data protection regime, POPIA, which is the protection of personal information, and also access to information laws provide another angle. POPIA governs personal data processing and even automated decisions. Crucially, Section 71 of the POPIA forbids decisions that are made solely by automated systems if they have a legal or significant effect on a person. Put simply, AI cannot make important decisions without oversight. Although Grok's tweets are not a formal legal decision, the principle implies that algorithmic outputs that harm people should involve human checks. More broadly, the POPI Act grants individuals rights to access, to correct, and also to delete personal information about them. So if Grok's outputs were based on someone's personal data, that person could demand correction under the POPI Act. Also, under the Promotion of Access to Information Act, PAIA, one can also request records from private bodies if needed to protect a right. In theory, an affected South African could invoke PAIA to try and force XAI, Twitter or X, to disclose how Grok's white genocide output was generated. For example, asking for the data sources or the training steps which were used. Although these laws do not neatly cover every AI scenario yet, commentators do note that the POPI Act contains enforceable clauses on algorithmic accountability. In practice, this means that AI companies may soon face formal accountability requirements in the form of transparency reports, human review layers, and clear channels for correcting wrongful outputs. According to Flaxman, South Africa's forthcoming national AI framework emphasizes transparency and trust, calling explicitly for robust data governance and accountability in AI systems. Such measures could in future force Grok's creators to open their black box. By this, I mean forcing Grok to explain how an answer was generated and updating the bot when it is wrong. Stage 4. Delict and AI. Here we'll be discussing how delictual law may be used to curb AI negligence, like Grok's white genocide remarks. Beyond media law, South African delict or tort law could come into play. A delictual claim requires a wrongful negligent act causing harm. So if Grok's lies can be shown to cause real damage, say by inciting panic, sowing racial divisions, disharmony, or harming reputations, that may be an unlawful act for which someone must pay. For example, if Grok's fabricated stories damage the dignity of black people or even tarnishes the country's image, affected parties could theoretically sue for damages under ordinary delict principles. Central to delict is foreseeability. The courts would ask, should the AI developers have foreseen that Grok might pump out a genocidal conspiracy? If the answer is yes, then failing to prevent it might be negligent. One analysis by Cliff Decker-Hofmeyer suggests that courts would consider whether XAI or Grok took reasonable precautions when designing or deploying Grok. If Grok had the safeguards, disclaimer, human checks, for example, and warned users of the risks, a court might be reluctant to impose liability. But if it emerges that the developers knowingly let Grok feed on biased data or ignored red flags, then negligence could be found. Well, that is exactly what happened in the Grok gate. Its developers, Elon Musk, deliberately fed it wrongful and harmful information about a white genocide. By the way, it is not me saying so. Grok itself made that admission. So, in practical terms, a delictual claim could allege that Grok's output was an unlawful and negligent act by its creators. Victims would need to show that they suffered injury, financial or otherwise, as a direct result. Importantly, the South African courts do not require proof of actual financial loss for a definition-type harm. The harm to reputation or peace of mind can surface. But now, there is going to be a notable difficulty in holding Grok accountable. Having to link a foreign AI company's actions to harm in South Africa might raise jurisdiction issues. In stage 5, we ask the important question, should X, aka Twitter, police Grok AI? What responsibility do platforms like X or Grok have for AI-generated content? Under the Electronic Communication and Transaction Act's intermediary liability rules, X is largely insulated, unless if it ignores a formal takedown demand. As we have already noted, an X user or a regulator can notify X of an unlawful content under Section 77, and if X promptly removes Grok's post, it stays protected. I submit that that bar of accountability is very low. Imagine this hypothetical scenario of somebody stabbing you with a knife 6 inches in the back. If the person removes that knife 3 inches, real accountability has not started. Even if the person removes that knife entirely and completely, there is still no accountability. Real accountability starts only when that wound will start to heal. Real accountability and reconciliation will only occur if there are punitive measures which are able to deter future stabbings. Similarly, in the case of Grok AI, merely removing the post is not enough. An apology could surface. A cost order could be better. According to the law in its current state, however, Grok or XAI is not even required to proactively scan every AI chat for problems. The law does not impose a general policing duty. In practice, however, platforms often enact their own standards. For example, China's DeepSeek and Sam Altman's ChatGPT often refuses to answer political questions, and there is an inbuilt filter on the bot. In fact, even Grok's parent company, X, or formerly known as Twitter, has community guidelines standards against harassment and incitement. Interestingly enough, the very same Donald Trump's account was blocked by Twitter for posting insightful remarks. How then did Twitter fail to safeguard what we know it definitely has the technology to prevent when it came to the white genocide claims? Also, the question for the South African government is this. The government recently investigated a prominent X account at Twatterbas for spreading racist misinformation. The law enforcement even stated flatly that deliberate misinformation and racial hatred are criminal acts. These developments suggest that both our laws have teeth to bite. Why then are they failing to do the same in this instance of Grok and Elon Musk? Is Lady Justice no longer blind? Has her sword gone blunt? Or her scales tilted to the rich and powerful billionaires? Now let us look at the last stage, stage 6, where I want us to answer the question as to what can be done to prevent future harm. I am sure that the law will take its course. But today, I also want us to focus on the human response, on how we should deal with these AI bots. It is very tempting to see these models as perfect sources of knowledge, but they are not. They are messy cauldrons of data. All AI models are made using bits of data, and that may include propaganda, and that may include fake news, and yes, sometimes also abusive language. Unlike humans, AI do not know what is right and what is wrong. It simply absorbs everything that it gets. So what then do we do as the users? I say start using your own processor. I'm talking about your brain, human intelligence. When AI bots tells you something, don't believe them hook, line and sinker. Do your own research. Read a book and then come to a conclusion. Because AI models do get a lot of things wrong. Look at this study from 2024. It says AI bots agreed with false statements 26% of the time. Here is another study. It found that AI search engines showed wrong sources 60% of the time. So your first job is to accept this truth, that AI bots are not perfect. If you still insist on believing them, I have an experiment for you. I asked Grok a simple question. Are you always right? That's what I asked. And look at the answer. No, I am not always right. I am not infallible. Even Grok admits that it can be wrong. So humans should accept it too. Preventing another Grok fiasco will take a combination of law, tech safeguards, and public awareness. Possible steps will include the following. Firstly, we can introduce regulatory guardrails. In this instance, I'm speaking about introducing formal AI impact assessment and audit. For instance, requiring that any powerful AI system undergoes a human rights impact study before deployment, where it will be flagging risks like hate speech. The good thing is that South Africa's draft AI policy already calls for transparency and accountability in algorithms in this regard. Secondly, what we can do is implement transparency standards. Here I'm speaking about mandating that AI platforms must publish transparency reports, including data on false or harmful outputs and how they have corrected it. This could include a technical algorithm disclosure regime similar to bills in the European Union and China that forces companies to explain certain decision makings. Thirdly, judicial amendments. South Africa could update existing laws to explicitly cover AI. For example, expanding the POPI Act or the Equality Act with AI-specific provisions like a right to an explanation for AI-driven misinformation or formalizing liability for AI developers. Lastly, we should look into public education. We should launch media literacy campaigns about AI. As newsrooms in the country have already learned, deepfakes and AI claims can be very convincing. Empowering citizens to question sensational online claims will reduce harm. And we have come to the end of our podcast presentation. But now in the end, One remark that I want to highlight is that Grok's wild claims about white genocide, they shine the spotlight on the legal gaps in South Africa's AI era. Our policymakers have been caught off guard in this instance. We need younger parliamentarians. We need parliamentarians who are much more informed about AI and the fourth industrial revolution. We need parliamentarians who are informed about information technology. Because of why? Cutting-edge technology requires cutting-edge oversight. Simple as that. Thank you very much for having listened to today's podcast. For any further more information, click the link in the bio. Thank you. Finish.